I was 70 years old the night my only daughter stood in my living room, lifted a crystal flute of champagne, and announced to a crowd of strangers that I no longer owned the house I had lived in for more than 40 years. I had walked up the front steps, expecting the quiet Christmas dinner Clara promised me over the phone. She said it would just be the four of us, her Evan, Lydia, and me. I even brought a small tin of ginger cookies, the same recipe Daniel loved when he was alive. I remember thinking the night air felt oddly warm for December in Portland. Maybe that was why I didn't notice the noise until I turned the handle. When the door opened, the sound hit me first. Laughter, loud music, and the overlapping chatter of far too many people. Then the smell, expensive perfume, white wine, and something sugary burning in the kitchen. I froze at the threshold, still wearing my coat. None of it made sense. Clara spotted me almost immediately. She was in a gold dress that looked nothing like the simple sweater she told me she planned to wear. Lydia Caldwell stood beside her wrapped in a velvet shawl and smiling as if she owned every inch of my house. Clara raised her glass. "Mom," she called out, voice bright and sharp enough to cut through every conversation. "You've officially lost everything. We sold your house." People laughed, some politely, some too loudly. A few lifted their phones to record the moment, and the sight of that stung more than the words. I recognized only a handful of faces. The rest were Clara's influencer friends, the ones who followed her around with perfect lighting and fake compliments. Not one person seemed confused. They had all known before I did. Lydia leaned in toward her, patting Clara's arm. "Real debt needed real solutions," she said with a proud smirk. "Not the little bills your mother worries about." I felt the world tilt, and for a moment I wondered if I had misheard. But Lydia's satisfied expression told me everything. She had wanted this. She had orchestrated this. And Clara, my daughter, the same girl whose scraped knees I used to kiss, whose nightmares I used to soothe, had led her. I stood perfectly still. No shouting, no gasping, no tears. Just a quiet, steadying breath, the kind you learn to take after a lifetime of nursing when panic only wastes valuable time. Clara's smile faltered. "Mom," she said, stepping closer. "Why aren't you saying anything? What's so funny?" She expected a scene. She expected collapse. Instead, something inside me settled. A long, thin line of anger, sharpened by betrayal, straightened itself into something almost calm. My lips curved into a small, deliberate smile. "The house you sold," I said softly. Meeting her eyes without blinking is actually... Clara blinked. Lydia's smirk faded. A few phones lowered. Even the music felt quieter for a moment. I let the unfinished sentence hang in the air, heavy and intentional. I didn't say another word. I stepped further inside, set the tin of cookies on the side table, and let the weight of their confusion build. They had no idea what was coming. I did not begin my life in Selwood, but the best parts of it happened there. Daniel and I bought the house when we were barely in our 30s, long before the coffee shops and the yoga studios arrived back when the neighborhood felt like a quiet pocket pressed against the Willamette River. The house was old even then, crooked windows, uneven floors, but Daniel loved every flaw. He said it matched us. After he died, the rooms felt different. Too big in some places, too loud in others. I tried selling it once, maybe a year after the funeral, but when the agent stepped inside and made a cheerful comment about potential, I stopped her mid-sentence. I was not ready. I stayed. My days found a pattern after that. I woke early, made tea in the blue kettle Daniel bought at a garage sale, and sat on the porch while the neighborhood came alive. Children biking to school, dogs pulling their sleepy owners, retirees like me walking in pairs. If anyone waved, I waved back. On Thursdays, I volunteered at the community center. Tessa, who ran the programs, always joked that I knew everyone in the building before lunch. I liked listening. People told me things without even realizing it. Some days I stayed late just to avoid the quiet waiting at home. Clara used to love Selwood when she was little. She climbed the trees in the yard, helped Daniel plant tomatoes, and ran through the house barefoot. But everything changed when she discovered the world lived through phones, not front porches. Her visits became shorter, filled with filming and posing, and her conversations grew crowded with the language of followers, sponsorships, and engagement. "Mom, no one wants to watch someone just sit and drink tea," she told me once, setting up her ring light in my kitchen. "You need to post something interesting." I laughed and said, "Well then, I suppose I'm hopeless." She didn't laugh back. Her world moved too fast for mine. I tried keeping up, but every time she showed me a new video, her voice carried a sharpness I didn't recognize. Evan noticed, though he rarely said much. He would give me a small, tired smile from behind her, as if apologizing without words. I told myself I wasn't losing her. She was just busy. That is what mothers say when the truth becomes too heavy. The house made that heaviness bearable. Daniel's old record player still sat in the corner. His coat hung in the hall closet because I could not bring myself to move it. The room where he took his last breath stayed exactly as it was, sunlight falling across the same spot on the floor. Whenever the loneliness crept too close, I walked through the house and reminded myself that love had lived here, real, warm, steady love. That mattered more than anything else. One evening, a few months before the Christmas party, Clara stood in my kitchen as I made tea. She stared at the old stove and said, "You know, Mom, you could sell this place for a lot of money now. People pay ridiculous amounts for old houses in this neighborhood." I stirred the sugar slowly. "This house is not for sale." She rolled her eyes. "One day you'll have to be practical." I did not answer. Practicality was not the reason Daniel and I built a life here, and I knew deep down practicality was not why Clara brought it up. She wanted something from me. I just did not know yet how much she was willing to take. That night I walked from room to room before bed, listening to the familiar creaks under my feet. Every sound reminded me that the house had held me through the worst years of my life. It guarded my grief, sheltered my memories, and kept me tethered to something pure. I never imagined that the place protecting me would become the very thing someone else tried so hard to steal. Clara always said she was building a brand, but most days it looked like she was building a stage she was terrified to step off. I saw more of her through her phone screen than I ever did in person. When she came over, she brought lights, makeup cases, outfit racks, and a constant stream of exaggerated expressions. "Mom, can you move a little?" she said one afternoon, nudging me away from the counter so her dress would catch the sunlight. "My followers love natural lighting." "You are in my kitchen," I reminded her. "It's called authenticity," she said, angling her chin and pretending to sip coffee she never actually drank. "People pay for this." Evan stood behind her, leaning against the wall with his arms folded. He looked exhausted. Whenever Clara turned toward her camera, his face softened into something polite. Whenever she turned away, the tension returned to his jaw like a spring recoiling. Lydia arrived a few minutes later. She always entered with a sigh that sounded rehearsed, touching her forehead as if the weight of the world lived behind it. "Clara, sweetheart," she said, lowering herself onto a stool. I barely slept again. "I do not know how much more of this my body can take." Clara rushed to her. "You should have called me earlier, Mom." "I hate bothering you," Lydia whispered loud enough for me to hear. "You already do so much. You are all I have." Evan's head dropped. I could almost feel the guilt pouring out of him. I poured water into the kettle, trying to keep my voice light. "Would you like tea, Lydia?" She flinched as though the offer offended her. "I would love to, Helena, but I am not sure I can keep anything down today." Clara shot me a look that translated to, "See what I have to deal with." It was the same expression she gave me constantly in those months, half resentment, half exhaustion. Clara Evan murmured, "Your shoot starts in 20 minutes. Can you please?" she snapped. "Not pressure me right now." He backed away immediately. Lydia pressed her hand to her chest, like she might fall apart if anyone breathed too loudly. I set the kettle down. "Maybe you should both take a break." Clara's eyes narrowed. "I do not need a break. I need support." The room tightened. When Clara felt cornered, every sentence became a wound she threw with precision. She turned to Evan. "You never help. You never understand." "I am trying," he said quietly. "But you listen to your mother more than you listen to me." That was the wrong thing to say. Lydia straightened, offended. "Do not blame me for your marriage problems." Evan exhaled shakily. "I am not." Clara's voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried the weight of years. "You know I did not get support growing up. Mom was always working nights, always tired, always gone. I had to learn everything alone." The words hit me harder than she expected. Or perhaps exactly as she intended. I swallowed, unable to speak for a moment. Lydia placed a hand over Clara's. "And now she wants to tell you how to manage your life. It is unbelievable." Evan looked at me with an expression I recognized from my years at the hospital, the look of someone who wants to help, but does not know which wound to touch first. I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "Clara, I worked nights because we needed the money." "I thought you thought wrong," she said sharply. "You do not get to rewrite my childhood just because you remember it differently." The room fell silent again. She grabbed her phone, wiped her eyes, forced her voice into cheerful brightness and said, "Okay, followers, here is today's look, as if nothing had happened." Evan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them and mouthed a quiet apology to me behind her back. I offered him a small nod. I did not blame him. He was stuck between two women who demanded different versions of him every day. That afternoon as they left, Lydia clung to Clara's arm, whispering, "You are all I have. Do not abandon me." Clara held her close, drowning under the responsibility she had chosen and resented at the same time. When the door closed, I stayed at the counter a long while, staring at the ring light still glowing in my kitchen. Clara had forgotten to turn it off. Or maybe she left it intentionally, a reminder that her world did not include me unless it served her story. I shut it off slowly, feeling the room go dim around me. Lydia's debt started showing up in small ways like crumbs leading back to a fire. The first sign was a thick envelope Clara left on my dining table one afternoon. She said it was nothing important, but she was too quick to hide the papers when I reached for them. Later, when she stepped outside to take a call, one page slid loose. I saw the logo. Before I saw the numbers, Spirit Mountain Casino. The receipt listed thousands of dollars in charges across several weekends. Beneath it were marked up statements from 3 different credit cards, each one past due. When Clara came back inside, her face was pale and tight around the mouth. "Mom, please do not touch my things." "I did not mean to," I said gently. "Is Lydia all right?" "She is trying," Clara snapped, stuffing the papers back inside the envelope. "Things are just complicated." I sat down, letting the silence do the work. Clara only grew more agitated. "You do not understand," she said, pacing. "My audience expects a certain level of quality. I cannot show up in a thrift store coat while people ask me for holiday recommendations, and Lydia is drowning. She could lose everything if we do not help her." I kept my voice calm. "What happened to her savings?" Clara let out a bitter laugh. "Savings. She made some bad decisions. That is all." I thought about the casino receipts and chose my next words carefully. "I can help with groceries. Maybe a month of utilities." Utilities. Clara's voice cracked. "Mom, she owes tens of thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands. And the collection agencies are calling nonstop. That is a lot for anyone to handle," I said. "But I cannot." You just do not want to, she said, stabbing the words into the air, like accusations. You sit in this house, you drink your tea, you live off Dad's pension, and you refuse to see that other people have real problems. I flinched. Daniel's pension paid for nothing but our old medical bills and property taxes. She knew that. She also knew how hard it hit me when she dismissed the life her father and I built. Lydia appeared that evening with a dramatic sigh, lowering herself onto my couch, as though gravity held her differently than the rest of us. Helena, she whispered, I hate that you have to see me like this. I feel so ashamed. Clara rushed to her side. Mom, you do not need to pretend. Helena just does not understand how serious this is. Lydia dabbed her eyes with a tissue. I never meant to cause trouble. I only wanted to make sure Clara and Evan were secure. I thought I could win enough to help them. My stomach tightened. You went to the casino to help them. That was the plan, Lydia murmured. But sometimes the world does not reward good intentions. Clara wrapped an arm around her mother-in-law. She is trying. But this is bigger than both of us now. I stood there with my hands folded, unsure what role I was supposed to play. Helper, judge, witness. Lydia leaned toward me. If you could just loan us something small, Helena. Just until we sort things out. I can help with small things, I said carefully, but I cannot cover debts. Clara's eyes hardened. Not even a little. You have equity sitting in this house. You are not doing anything with it. I felt something shift beneath the surface. A flicker of unease. Clara, I said slowly, that equity is my safety. It is all I have. Then use it, she said. You are not moving forever. You might as well put it to work. That was the moment the first true warning whispered through me. Something was off. Days later, a bill I had left on my desk vanished. Then a bank alert arrived, thanking me for switching to paperless statements, something I never requested. The heartbeat of their desperation had finally reached my doorstep, and I could feel it pulsing beneath every choice they made. Clara arrived just before sunset, her face blotchy from crying. She walked straight into my living room without taking off her coat, clutching a folder so tightly her knuckles were white. Mom, she said, voice trembling, I need your help, please. I cannot breathe anymore. I set aside the blanket I had been folding. Tell me what is going on. It is everything, she whispered. The bills, the calls, the pressure. I am drowning. And Lydia, she is falling apart. Evan is barely holding us together. I feel like I am losing control of everything. She opened the folder with shaky hands and pulled out a stack of papers. This, she said, sliding the forms toward me, will fix everything. It is just a routine power of attorney. Temporary. Totally normal. I did not touch them. Why do you need that? So I can help manage things for you, she said quickly. Mail utilities, medical stuff. You are always worried about getting confused with paperwork. This would just make life easier for both of us. I felt something cold move through me. Clara, I am not confused about my mail. Her expression tightened. I did not say you were confused. Sometimes you forget things. I forget things like everyone else, I said gently. But you are older than everyone else, she shot back, before she could stop herself. Silence cracked between us. Her tone softened immediately. Mom, I did not mean it like that. I am just scared. Lydia is scared. Evan is overwhelmed. We need one steady thing in our lives, and it should be you. The guilt in her voice wrapped itself around my ribs. Clara knew exactly how to use it, how to make me feel responsible for her stability, her marriage, her life. I do not know, I murmured, glancing at the top page. Legal terms, paragraphs, boxes waiting for my initials. Clara swallowed hard. Are you saying you do not trust me? That is not what I said. It feels like it. Her eyes filled again. You think I would hurt you? Is that what you think of me? No, I said quickly. Of course not. She stepped closer. lowering her voice like she was afraid of being overheard. I am your daughter. I am trying to keep everything from collapsing. If you do not help me, I do not know what will happen. The papers lay between us like a test I did not want to fail. I reached for the pen. Lydia appeared in the doorway, then leaning heavily against the frame, as though she had been listening. It is standard paperwork, Helena, she said soothingly. All older adults sign something like that eventually. It is nothing scary. Clara nodded, wiping her eyes. Just sign here and here, then everything will be okay. I signed where she pointed. My hand shook more than I wanted her to see. When they left, Clara hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you. You saved us." I stood in the doorway long after their car pulled away, the house suddenly too quiet. Later that night, a knock startled me. When I opened the door, Mark Ruiz stood on the porch, holding a plate of leftover empanadas from his sister's restaurant. "Thought you might want something warm," he said. "You okay?" "You look tense." "I am fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a long day." He glanced past me, noticing the folder still lying open on the coffee table. "Looks like paperwork." I hesitated the truth, pressing against the back of my throat. "It is nothing," I finally said. "Just some insurance updates." Mark nodded, though his eyes lingered on my face. "If you ever need another set of eyes on anything, you know where I live." "I know," I replied. I closed the door gently after he left. The house felt heavier now, as if the ink on those papers had seeped into the walls. I sat down, folded my hands, and stared at the signatures I had written in my own careful handwriting. It started with a bank notice I did not remember agreeing to. "Thank you for switching to paperless statements," the email read. I stared at it, certain I had never touched that setting. I preferred real envelopes, real paper. I forwarded the email to Clara out of habit. She responded within minutes. "Mom, I changed it for you. Saves you the hassle. You are welcome." I typed back, "Please do not change things without telling me," but deleted the message before sending it. I did not want another argument. 2 days later, Clara showed up on my porch pulling mail from her bag. "I grabbed your letters from the box," she said. "No reason for you to walk down the steps in this weather." "It is raining," I reminded her. "Not a hurricane." She smiled too brightly. "Mom, let me do something for you." She handed me 3 envelopes. I noticed the stack looked thin for a week's worth of mail. "Was there anything else?" I asked. She shook her head. "Just this." Her tone was light, but her eyes flicked toward her bag as she spoke. Inside, Lydia waited in the kitchen, stirring a cup of tea like she lived there. "Helena," she said sweetly, "did Clara give you all your mail? Sometimes it gets confusing. There is so much paperwork for someone your age." I set the envelopes on the counter. "I can handle my own mail." Lydia laughed gently, as though I had told a joke. "Of course. But it does not hurt to have someone younger look after things, especially with the value of this house." I stiffened. "What about the house?" "Oh, nothing specific," she said, lifting her tea with delicate fingers. "Just seems like such a waste, all that equity sitting untouched. You could do so much good with it." Clara entered the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. "Mom, Lydia and I were just talking about options." "Nothing serious." "Options," I repeated. Clara's smile flickered. "Just possibilities. You worry too much." I watched the two of them exchange a glance, quick, practiced, familiar. Lydia rested a comforting hand on Clara's arm, and my daughter leaned into her as though the gesture was natural. I tried to breathe normally. Later that evening, I checked my bank account online. A withdrawal for $400 caught my eye. Not a large amount, but I would have remembered making it. I called Clara. "Did you use my card?" "Of course not," she said. "Why would you ask that? There is a withdrawal I do not recognize. That is why I set up the power of attorney," she said, her voice suddenly tight. "You have been forgetting things." "It is okay, Mom. That is why I am helping." My chest tightened. "I am not forgetting things." Then what do you call this? She snapped. You are accusing me of stealing. I did not say that. You did not have to, she said, and hung up. I set the phone down carefully. My hands were shaking. The next morning, Evan stopped by to return a casserole dish. He almost never came alone. Thank you, he said quietly, placing it on the table. Clara asked me to bring it. There was something off in his voice. Something heavy. Evan, I said gently. Is everything all right? He avoided my eyes. Clara is stressed. Lydia, too. So I have heard. He rubbed the back of his neck. Just give her space, Helena. She thinks you do not trust her. I trust my daughter, I replied. I am just concerned. Evan exhaled. I know. He looked like he wanted to say more. His mouth opened, then closed again. He stepped back. I should go. I watched him hurry down the walkway, shoulders hunched like he was carrying something he was afraid to drop. That night I sat at the kitchen table with the mail Clara had given me 3 envelopes, and nothing more. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of the old clock. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things that Clara was trying to help not hide. But every instinct in me, the same instincts that carried me through decades as a nurse, told me something was very wrong. And the frightening part was that I had no idea where the cracks began or how deep they ran. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked between a grocery flyer and a charity envelope. The return address made my stomach tighten before I even opened it. Willamette First Credit Union. Inside a single sentence cut straight through me. This notice confirms the opening of your home equity line of credit in the amount of $140,000. I read it twice, then a third time, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something harmless. They did not. I grabbed my coat and drove to the branch in Selwood Parking, crookedly because my hands would not stop trembling. Inside, the young banker behind the counter looked barely 20. Ma'am, he said with a polite smile. How can I help you today? I held out the letter. I did not open this. Someone is using my home as collateral. He scanned the page. The smile vanished. Please come with me. He led me to a small glass office and pulled up files on his screen. His fingers hesitated over the keyboard before he turned the monitor slightly toward me. This account was opened using a power of attorney document, he said. Signed by your daughter. My throat closed. Clara. Yes, he said gently. She signed as your agent. That document was for utilities. Medical emergencies. Not this. He clicked through more pages. There were withdrawals made within the first 48 hours, 3 separate transfers totaling $140,000. I gripped the edge of the table. Where did the money go? He hesitated. I should not disclose other people's accounts, but the funds were transferred to an account under the name Lydia Caldwell. I closed my eyes. The room felt like it was tilting. Clara had told me Lydia owed tens of thousands of dollars. But this was nearly double everything I owned. I need to see the papers she signed, I whispered. He printed a packet, thick, crisp, covered in Clara's handwriting. Familiar loops. Familiar curves. My daughter's signature repeated over and over. And here, he said carefully, is a file attached to the account. The branch manager flagged it because it involves a potential property transfer. He slid another document across the desk. At the top, preliminary sale contract. Below it, buyer's closing scheduled for December 23rd. My breath stopped. They are selling my house. He nodded once, returning the papers quietly, as if lowering a casket. It appears so. I pressed a hand to the center of my chest. The beat felt irregular, skipping like a record caught on a scratch. Mrs. Ward, he said softly, are you all right? No, I said, forcing myself upright. Show me where she signed, stating she had the right to sell my property. He pointed to a paragraph buried in the middle of the contract, labeled Authority as Agent. Clara's signature curled confidently across the bottom. She signed it, he said. And the title company scheduled the closing. They assumed everything was legitimate. I swallowed hard. They did this behind my back. My daughter and her mother-in-law. He didn't speak, but the pity in his face left no room for doubt. I need copies of everything I said. Every form, every transfer, every signature. I can print them for you, he replied. But Mrs. Ward, this is serious. Very serious. I know. When he left the room, I stared at the pages scattered across the desk. The numbers blurred. The signatures sharpened. Clara had not made a mistake. She had made a plan. The banker returned with a neatly stapled stack. I slid it into my purse, thanked him, and walked out of the branch, slowly gripping the strap so tightly my fingers ached. Outside, the sky was gray, low, heavy. I stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, unable to move. My legs felt hollow, like the bones inside them had thinned. Then, something inside me steadied, not anger, not fear, but a clarity I had not felt in years. I took a long breath, straightened my spine, and walked back to my car. If my daughter thought she could erase my life without consequence, she had underestimated the woman who raised her. I was not finished. I knocked on Mark Ruiz's door just after sunset. I had not meant to. I told myself I would wait until morning, gather my thoughts, breathe. But my hands would not stop shaking, and the weight of the papers in my purse felt like it was dragging me under. Mark opened the door in his slippers, glasses perched low on his nose. "Helena, you all right?" "No," I said. "I need you." He stepped aside immediately. "Come in." I sat at his kitchen table, spreading the documents like broken glass between us. Mark scanned the first page without speaking, then the second, then the entire stack. His expression darkened. "Tell me everything," he said. I told him about the bank letter, the withdrawals, the sale contract. I told him Clara had used the power of attorney. I told him Lydia's debt was large enough to swallow a small house whole. I told him how quietly, how deliberately they had cut me out of my own life. When I finished, Mark leaned back slowly, like he needed space to absorb the blow. "This isn't an accident," he said. "This is calculated elder fraud." The words hit me harder than any of Clara's lies. "Fraud," I repeated. "Yes," he said firmly. "Clara used legal authority she did not understand or did understand far too well to financially exploit you. And Lydia. She is the beneficiary. They did not make a mistake, Helena. They made a plan." My chest tightened. "Mark, I do not want to ruin my daughter." He held my gaze. "She is ruining you." I folded my hands, trying to keep them steady. "What do I do?" "The first thing," he said, "is revoking the power of attorney. Tonight." He went to his office, returned with a fresh document, and placed it in front of me. "This cancels everything she had access to. Sign here." I signed. My hand trembled, but the ink landed clean. "Next," he said, "we notify the bank and the title company. They need to freeze the transaction immediately." He dialed the bank, introduced himself as my legal representative, and explained the situation. His voice stayed calm, low, precise. When he hung up, he let out a slow breath. "The line is frozen," he said. "No more withdrawals." He called the title company next. A long conversation followed, questions, transferred calls, hushed tones. When he finally ended the call, he rubbed his jaw. "They are halting the closing. The contract is now flagged for potential fraud." I exhaled shakily, pressing my palms to the cool table. "Helena," he said gently, "this is going to get ugly. Clara will realize the transaction is blocked. She will panic. Lydia will push her harder. They will try to manipulate you, I know. You need to protect yourself, and that means staying quiet." I looked up. Quiet. Yes. Do not confront them. Do not tip them off. Let them show who they are. The more they reveal, the stronger your case will be. I stared at the papers, the signatures, the dates. For months, I had been reacting, absorbing, hoping, giving excuses for behavior that had none. Now Mark was asking me to act. He reached across the table and placed a hand over mine. Helena, listen to me. You are not powerless. You are not confused. You are in the middle of a crime that you did not commit. Let them talk. Let them expose themselves. Your silence will be your shield. Something shifted inside me then. Not anger, not grief, but something colder and sharper. Resolve. I will stay quiet, I said. Mark nodded. Good. When the time comes, you will speak. And when you do, they will have nowhere left to hide. I gathered the documents, slid them back into my purse, and stood. The air outside felt colder than before, but the heaviness pressing on my chest had changed shape. For the first time in months, it felt like something I could carry. I had never acted a day in my life, but after revoking the power of attorney, I learned how to pretend. Pretend to sleep. Pretend to smile. Pretend not to see the danger inching closer every hour. Clara came by the next morning with peppermint lattes and a rehearsed brightness. Mom, we thought we could host Christmas at your place this year, she said, dropping her coat on a chair. We need a larger space, and your house photographs beautifully. Christmas here, I repeated carefully. Yes, she said, already scrolling through a list on her phone. We will set up the tree by the front windows. Lydia thinks it will look elegant with gold and white decor. Perfect lighting. Lydia stood behind her, nodding. We want to bring some warmth into this house. Clara's idea is lovely. Both of them spoke as if the home already belonged to them, as if I were a guest borrowing space. I forced a gentle smile. If you think it will help, Clara clasped her hands together. Thank you, Mom. This means so much to us. Lydia added a quiet, you are saving us. I watched them unload boxes of ornaments from their car, moving around the living room with an ease that made my skin crawl. They draped garlands, set up lights, and argued over where to place the tree. I stayed in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, staring at the steam until it disappeared. When they finally left the house, looked festive, warm, bright, full. But the feeling was wrong. The decorations were loud, expensive metallic. Not a single ornament from Daniel and me. It was like watching strangers dress a body I had not agreed to bury. I folded my arms tightly and called Tessa from the community center. Helena, she answered. Are you coming in tomorrow? The holiday volunteers miss your energy. My home is in danger, I said quietly. I cannot talk about the details yet. Her voice softened. If you need help, I am here, I know. We hung up and the silence settled again. Later that evening, Mark came by with a folder tucked under his arm. I have more for you, he said, stepping into the living room and stopping short when he saw the decorations. They did all this. Yes, I said. He muttered something in Spanish under his breath before setting the folder on the coffee table. 3 forged signatures, he said, flipping pages, all clearly copied from previous documents. And here, your daughter wrote a statement claiming you were mentally overwhelmed and unable to keep up with finances. My breath caught. She said that she submitted it to the lender as proof of need, he said. Classic manipulation. She knows you would never see it unless someone pulled the file. I sat down slowly. She made me look incompetent. She made you look vulnerable, he replied. There is a difference. Vulnerability is real. Incompetence is manufactured. He paused. Detective Nina Lopez is reviewing what I sent her. She is discreet. She is also very interested in Lydia. Why Lydia? Her debt record is long, he said. And this pattern: pull money from older relatives, take loans in their name, shift debt. It is something Nina has seen before. I clasped my hands together, letting the information settle like silt in water. What happens now? I asked. Now, Mark said, we wait. We let them prepare their party. We let them brag. We let them think they won. He looked around the decorated room, again, jaw tightening. They want an audience on Christmas. Then give them one. I followed his gaze to the tall tree Clara had insisted on placing near the front window. Gold ribbons tangled with white lights. It sparkled like something in a catalog. They want a performance, I said slowly. They will get one. Mark nodded. Exactly. I breathed in deeply, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger. Something colder. Steadier. A kind of bone-deep calm I had only felt twice in my life. Once when Daniel died, and once when Clara was born. As I turned off the lights and watched the gold ornaments fade into shadow, I understood what needed to happen next. The confrontation would not be private, not whispered, not gentle. If Clara and Lydia wanted an audience to watch my humiliation, they were going to get a crowd for the truth instead. I would walk into that party on Christmas with every document, every lie, every signature, every proof, and I would not tremble. They had decided my fate for me. I would show them how wrong they were. I parked 2 houses down, the warm glow spilling from my windows like someone else lived there. Laughter rang out onto the sidewalk. Clara's kind of laughter, too loud, too sharp, meant to impress people who would not remember her name by New Year's. I walked up my own steps without rushing. I had waited weeks for this moment, memorized every document, every date, every transfer. I carried none of the panic I had the day the bank letter came. Only a steady, quiet resolve. When I opened the door, the sound hit me like a wall music chatter glasses clinking. A dozen faces turned toward me, then 2 dozen. Phones rose instinctively. Lydia stood near the tree, wrapped in silver and smugness. Clara spotted me last. "Mom," she shouted, lifting a champagne flute. "Look who finally decided to show up." She raised her voice over the music, making sure every person in the room heard her. "You are officially standing in a home that is no longer yours." Applause scattered across the room. A few guests laughed like it was a toast. Someone whispered, "This is wild," as if he were watching a prank unfold. I stepped further inside. I did not remove my coat. Lydia adjusted her shawl and gave me a pitying smile. "It is not personal, Helena. We did what was necessary. Real debts require real solutions." A woman I had never met tilted her phone toward me, recording openly. "Oh my God, is she crying?" she whispered. I wasn't. I looked around the room slowly. My tree, my walls. The rug Daniel and I chose the year Clara started kindergarten. Every inch of the house decorated to fit Clara's image, not a single piece of me left. Clara sauntered closer, swirling her drink. "Mom, are you in shock? You have not said a word. I am listening," I answered. She laughed like she had won something. "Well, you should. The closing happened yesterday morning. Everything is done. You own nothing." I stayed still. She squinted at me. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I didn't answer. The silence unnerved her immediately. "Mom," she said, her voice rising, "this is not funny." I kept watching her. "What is so funny?" she snapped. "Why are you smiling like that?" Because I was. Slowly, deliberately, the room went quiet. Lydia shifted her weight, suddenly unsure. I lifted my chin, met Clara's eyes, and let her see a version of me she had never bothered to learn. "The house you sold," I said, calm as breath, "is actually Clara's face, drained of color." Lydia straightened abruptly. Around us, the guests leaned forward, phones lowering as instinct replaced entertainment. I let the unfinished sentence hang in the air, heavy and sharp as a blade. They wanted an audience. Now they had one. I let the room hold its breath. Clara opened her mouth, then closed it again. Lydia clutched her shawl as if fabric could save her. The crowd leaned in like they were front row at a show. "The house you sold," I said quietly, "is actually still mine." Clara blinked hard. "No, it is not. We closed yesterday." Chase said, You did not close anything, I interrupted. The power of attorney you used was revoked 2 weeks ago. A ripple moved through the room, whispers shifting feet, someone muttering, "Oh, God." Lydia stepped forward. "That is impossible. Helena, you signed." "I signed it," I said, "and then I canceled it." "You just did not expect me to know how." Clara's face tightened. "Mom, stop. You do not understand how these things work." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "I understand that the bank flagged the $140,000 equity line as fraudulent. I understand that the title company froze the contract. I understand that the closing was canceled because you never had the legal right to sell my home." A guest near the couch let out a low whistle. Across the room, a couple I did not recognize, the supposed buyers, were staring at each other in horror. "You told us everything was clear," the woman said, her voice cracking. "You said the money was secure. We transferred the entire amount." Clara whipped toward her. "It was secure." "It was— I do not know what my mother is talking about." Her voice pitched higher. "Panic now." Lydia grabbed her arm. "Do not panic," she hissed. "She is bluffing." I withdrew a folder from my purse, thick with printed documents, and held it up. "Here is the revocation notice. Here is the fraud report. Here are the emails from the title company confirming the freeze. And here is the report filed with the Portland Police Bureau." Someone gasped. Someone else backed away from Clara as though treachery were contagious. The male buyer stepped closer, face red. "You owe us earnest money, $85,000, non-refundable because you promised a clean title. Do you have any idea?" Evans suddenly moved forward, louder than anyone expected. "Enough." Clara spun toward him. "Evan, stay out of this." He looked at me, shoulders shaking. "Helena, I am so sorry. I should have stopped this. I knew something was wrong. I knew Lydia was lying. I just—" "Do not throw me under the bus," Lydia snapped. "This was your wife's decision. I never touched a bank form." "That is a lie," Evan said, voice breaking. "You begged Clara. You told her she would lose you if she did not fix your mess." Clara shoved him. "Stop talking." Lydia shoved Clara back. "Do not blame me for your bad planning." Clara's voice cracked into a scream. "Mom, why did you do this to me?" "I did not do anything to you," I said softly. "You did this to yourself." The room dissolved into shouts, buyers demanding money, guests whispering Evan, trying to calm Clara, Lydia yelling over him. I stepped back, the chaos swirling around me like a storm I no longer belonged to. Then I turned toward the door. No one tried to stop me. No one called after me. I walked out as quietly as I had walked in. The cold air outside felt cleaner than anything inside that house. I pulled my coat tighter, descended the steps, and kept walking. I had barely made it to the end of the block when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned to see the buyers, a young couple in their 30s, running down the sidewalk, their faces twisted with panic. "Mrs. Ward," the woman called out. "Please, please wait." I stopped. They reached me breathlessly. "You have to help us," the man said. "We trusted them. We paid everything. They said the house was clean. We used our savings, our entire savings." His voice cracked. The woman's hands shook. "I am sorry," I said quietly. "But I did not sell you anything." "Then who did we just give $85,000 to?" she whispered. Before I could answer, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. Detective Nina Lopez stepped out, her badge clipped to her belt, dark hair tied back, expression sharp and unreadable. "Mrs. Ward," she said, striding toward us. "I was in the neighborhood. Mark Ruiz asked me to keep an eye on the situation. Looks like that was a good idea." The buyers turned to her immediately. "Please," the woman said, "we need someone to tell us what happens now." Nina nodded. "I will need statements from both of you and from Mrs. Ward." She looked at me. "You all right?" "I am steady," I said. She gave a small, approving nod. Inside the house, the noise had grown louder. Raised voices shouted accusations, footsteps rushing back and forth. Nina walked up the steps without hesitation, the rest of us following behind her. The moment she stepped through the door, the chaos fractured. Lydia was crying into a tissue dramatically slumped onto the couch. Clara was pacing in frantic circles. Evan stood in the corner with his hands on his head. Guests clung to their coats, having no idea whether to stay or leave. Nina lifted her voice over the noise. Police. Everyone quiet. The room silenced instantly. She turned to Clara first. I understand you signed documents on behalf of your mother using a power of attorney. Clara swallowed. It was valid. It was valid, Nina said, until it was revoked 2 weeks ago. Clara's jaw twitched. I did not know that. Yes, you did, I said. You were notified by mail. Twice. Lydia stood abruptly. Do not listen to her. She is confused. That woman cannot keep track of her own bills. Nina's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Caldwell, sit down. Lydia opened her mouth again, then closed it. Nina turned to the buyers. Tell me exactly what they promised you. The couple described the house tour, the assurances of a clean title, the pressure to transfer the earnest money quickly. We trusted them, the woman whispered. They said Mrs. Ward approved everything. She did not, Nina replied. And the title company already flagged the file. Clara's voice broke. I did not mean for it to go this far. I thought if I fixed everything, Mom would understand. Understand what? Evan snapped. That you stole from her, that you lied. Clara glared at him. You are not innocent either. You knew about the debts. And I told you not to drag your mother into it, he said. You ignored me. Lydia suddenly pointed at him. This is your fault. You should have supported your wife. You abandoned her. Evan's face twisted, devastated. You manipulated her. You used her guilt. You used all of us. Nina raised a hand. Enough. I have heard plenty. She turned to me with a softness she had not shown anyone else. You did the right thing coming forward, Mrs. Ward. This is serious financial exploitation. We will pursue it. The room dissolved again, Clara sobbing, Lydia shouting over her, Evan standing helplessly in the chaos. I stepped outside, letting the cold air hit my face. The buyers followed me quiet, shaken. Nina gave them instructions and promised they would be contacted by the department's fraud division. When the door finally closed behind us, the house felt like a crime scene. A place I had loved reduced to something dangerous, poisoned by the people who should have protected it. And the worst part was knowing the unraveling had only just begun. Detective Nina Lopez moved quickly. Within 48 hours, she requested every document the bank, the title company, and the lending office had touched. By the end of the week, subpoenas were issued, and every person connected to the attempted sale received a formal notice requesting statements. I sat across from Nina in a small interview room at the precinct, my hands folded, my voice steady. She took notes while I explained every conversation, every missing bill, every moment that had seemed strange but not dangerous at the time. You did everything right, she said when I finished. You asked questions, they lied. That is not confusion, that is intent. From the hallway, I heard loud arguing Clara and Lydia. Their voices rose high enough to echo through the walls. They have been at it all morning, Nina said. They want separate interviews now. They are turning on each other. She stepped out to call the next witness. When Clara entered, her eyes were swollen hair, messy breath, shaky. She would not look at me. Mrs. Ward, please wait here, Nina said. Clara hesitated in the doorway. Mom, can we talk? No, I said quietly. Not right now. She flinched like the word hit her physically. Then she followed Nina inside. We already evaluated her. She is sharp and fully capable. Stop trying to discredit her. Lydia's mouth closed, but her eyes burned with resentment. Near lunchtime, they brought Evan in. He looked 20 years older than he had at Christmas. He sat down across from Nina and let out a long breath. "I should have stopped them," he said. But Lydia told Clara she would kill herself if she could not pay the debts. She cried. She said she would die alone. Clara panicked. Nina nodded slowly. "Did you know they took money from Helena?" I suspected, he whispered. But every time I brought it up, Lydia screamed at me. Clara cried. I thought maybe I was overreacting." "You were not," Nina said. He rubbed his hands over his face. "I am so sorry for all of it." The day ended with stacks of evidence, forged signatures, bank transfers, emails, text messages, and Clara's false financial claims about my mental state. Nina placed every piece carefully into a large folder labeled Elder Financial Exploitation. She walked me to the front of the precinct. "This is enough," she said. "The case is strong. We are moving forward." For a moment, I could not find my voice. Nina squeezed my arm. "You did not imagine it. You did not overreact. You were targeted." I nodded slowly, breathing in the cold evening air. The weight inside me shifted again, not gone, but defined now. Named, contained. Behind me, in one of the interview rooms, Clara began to cry. I did not turn back. I sat at my kitchen table long after the sun went down, the house dim except for the small lamp beside me. The investigation had pulled every truth into the open, but now that the noise had settled, something heavier filled the silence. The love I had for Clara. The love I wished I did not feel. When she was little, she used to crawl into my lap after my night shifts, smelling faintly of crayons and oatmeal. She would press her cheek against my uniform and whisper, "Mama, you came home." Those mornings made the exhaustion worth it. I worked nights so she could have a future that cost more than what Daniel and I earned. I worked so she would never feel the hunger or instability I felt growing up. But somewhere along the way, she learned to mistake sacrifice for absence. I remembered the day she told me she hated my job. She was 11, angry, clutching a school project I missed while tending to a dying patient. "You care about strangers more than me," she said. I tried to explain, but the hurt stuck with her, and I let the guilt grow like ivy, wrapping around every decision I made afterward. Tessa sat across from me now, hands folded gently. She had come as soon as she heard about the investigation. "You look tired," she said softly. I admitted, "but it is not the legal mess. It is Clara. I keep thinking about where I failed." "You did not fail," Tessa said. "You loved her. You worked to give her stability. None of that is failure. I let her treat me like a resource, I said. Every time she wanted something, I gave in. I told myself it was love. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe I taught her that no matter how badly she behaved, I would choose her." Tessa reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "Guilt is not love, and enabling is not kindness." I breathed in slowly. When she cried about her childhood, I felt responsible. I thought if I supported her enough, she would stop feeling the hurt. Instead, it only made her believe she could take and take. "You are allowed to stop," Tessa said. "You are allowed to love her and still set a boundary that protects you." The idea felt both foreign and necessary. "I want to let her go," I whispered. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I cannot keep trying to keep her whole while she tears pieces from me. Tessa squeezed my hand. "Then that is what you do. You end the cycle. For you. And maybe one day for her." The house was quiet again after she left. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the space Clara and Lydia had tried to claim as their own. I felt the grief of a mother who still loved her daughter, and the resolve of a woman who finally understood love did not mean surrender. I would protect what was mine, even if it meant protecting it from the person I gave life to. The courtroom felt colder than the winter morning outside. Polished wood stiff benches, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, every detail sharpened the tension in the air. Clara sat at the defendant's table with Lydia beside her, both of them pale and tight-lipped. Evan sat 2 rows back alone, his wedding ring gone. Detective Nina Lopez gave me a small nod from the witness area. Mark Ruiz sat behind me for support. I inhaled slowly, steadying myself. When the bailiff called the session to order, the judge entered with a stack of documents, my documents clipped together in a thick binder. Case number. He began flipping through the pages. Elder financial exploitation, fraudulent conveyance breach of fiduciary duty, and unlawful use of a power of attorney. Clara's fingers shook where they gripped the table. The judge looked up. I have reviewed the evidence in detail. The findings are clear. For a moment, the only sound in the room was Lydia's shaky exhale. First, the judge said the house in Selwood remains the sole legal property of Mrs. Helena Ward. All fraudulent attempts to convey or encumber the property are void. Clara's shoulders trembled. Lydia closed her eyes as if bracing for impact. Second, the judge continued. The home equity line of credit opened under the revoked power of attorney is declared fraudulent. Mrs. Ward is absolved of all liability. A soft gasp came from Clara, barely audible. Third, Clara Ward and Lydia Caldwell are jointly responsible for restitution of the $140,000 withdrawn from the equity line. In addition, they are ordered to repay the buyer's earnest money $85,000 with interest. The buyers seated to my left let out audible sighs of relief. And lastly, the judge said, voice firm, Mrs. Caldwell's gambling accounts, casino markers, and loan statements will be turned over to the Attorney General's office for evaluation of further criminal charges. Lydia whimpered. Real fear. The first honest emotion I had seen from her. The judge wasn't finished. Mrs. Clara Ward's emails indicate clear intent to deceive. Her attempt to portray her mother as incompetent is especially concerning. The court therefore orders financial conservatorship oversight. All accounts, cards, and assets belonging to Mrs. Clara Ward will be monitored for the next 18 months. Clara's mouth fell open in disbelief. My bank accounts. You cannot. You forfeited that privilege when you committed fraud, the judge said without raising his voice. Evans stood abruptly. Your Honor, I would like to submit a filing. The judge nodded. Go ahead. Evan handed a single sheet to the bailiff. Petition for divorce, he said quietly. Irreconcilable betrayal. Clara turned toward him, eyes wide. Evan, no. You promised. He shook his head. I did not promise to follow you into ruin. Lydia grabbed Clara's arm. This is your fault. All of it. Clara exploded. Do not blame me. This entire mess started with your debts. The judge banged his gavel once. Enough. This court stands adjourned. The room erupted into murmurs and shuffling feet. I rose slowly, my legs steady beneath me. Nina approached first. You did it, she said. Justice held. I nodded. It had to. Evan approached next, his voice trembling. I truly am sorry, Helena. I know I said, and I meant it, as Clara sobbed into her shaking hands and Lydia argued with her attorney. I walked out of the courtroom, not toward revenge, not toward fear, but toward something quieter. Freedom. I agreed to meet Clara in the little park off Selwood Riverfront only because Nina said it was safe and because some part of me needed closure. The winter air was cold enough to sting my cheeks as I walked down the path. Clara was already on the bench, hunched over, clutching a scarf with trembling fingers. She looked up when she heard my steps. Her mascara was smudged, her hair unstyled, her entire posture deflated. Not the polished influencer mask, just a frightened girl I once carried on my hip. Mom, she whispered. Thank you for coming. I sat, leaving space between us. You said it was urgent. She nodded hard. I do not know where to start. Her breath hitched, and for the first time since this disaster began, her tears felt real. No audience. No performance. Just pain. I messed up, she said. I ruined everything. I lied to you. I lied to Evan. I trusted Lydia and she—" Her voice cracked. "She used me, Mom. She kept telling me that if I did not help her, she would die. And I believed her. I believed every word. I did not speak. I let her keep going. I know you hate me," she whispered. "But I am begging you. Please, please do not turn your back on me. I need help. The restitution, the debts, I cannot pay them alone." There it was. The pivot I had been waiting for. Her tears were real, but the request was the same. "Help me. Fix me. Save me. Clara," I said quietly. "I do not hate you, not even after everything." She swallowed. "Then help me. Please, just until I find my feet." "No," I said. She blinked, stunned. "No, Mom, I know," I repeated. "I will not be your bank. I will not be the person you drain when life gets hard. I am done sacrificing myself so you can avoid consequences." Her expression twisted. Hurt, confusion, disbelief, all fighting at once. "Mom, you cannot just abandon me," she said. "I am your daughter. I know," I said softly. "And that is why this hurts. But loving you does not mean destroying myself for you." Before she could respond, Lydia stepped out from behind a tree, arms crossed, cheeks flushed with anger. She had been listening the whole time. "There she is," Lydia snapped, "the great Helena Ward, pretending she is innocent while her own daughter is drowning. How heartless can you be?" Clara flinched. "Lydia, stop." "No," Lydia hissed. "You cannot do this to her. You cannot tear your family apart. We need unity now. You owe us that." I stood slowly, turning fully toward her. "I do not owe you anything," I said. "Not unity, not forgiveness, and certainly not money." "You selfish old enough," I said quietly. "You manipulated my daughter. You used her until she could not tell guilt from reality. You will not use me too." Lydia stepped forward, but Clara grabbed her arm. "Lydia, stop! Just stop!" For the first time, Clara looked at her the way I had always hoped she would, clearly. Lydia pulled back, offended. "Fine. Ruin your life, both of you." She stormed away down the path, her boots crunching in the frost. Clara watched her leave, shoulders shaking. Then she whispered, "Mom, what do I do now?" "You learn," I said. "You stand on your own. You take responsibility. And if you want a relationship with me someday, you come to me with honesty, not desperation." She bit her lip, tears streaming freely. "I do not know how to do that." "You will," I said. "But not with my money, and not today." I touched her shoulder gently, then let my hand fall away. She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Goodbye, Clara." Her sob echoed behind me, sharp and raw, as I walked down the path and out of sight. I did not look back. 1 year later, my life no longer looked like the ruins Clara and Lydia expected. It looked lighter. My new apartment in Selwood was small. Just 1 bedroom, brick walls, warm light, but it felt honest. Mine. Every morning, the sun came through the east-facing windows and spilled across the floorboards. I swept myself. No secrets, no missing mail, no footsteps I did not trust. The house on Lambert Street, I sold it in spring. This time I signed the papers. I chose the buyers, a young Navy couple transferring from Coronado. Their hands shook when they held the keys, and the husband said quietly, "We will take good care of it, ma'am." I believed him. I took every dollar of the profit and donated it to a local nonprofit that supports elderly victims of financial fraud. It felt right to turn something stolen into something healing. Lydia was in no position to object anyway. Her bankruptcy filing became public record. Gambling debts, fake loans, unreported income, every skeleton she'd hidden spilled out. Her reputation collapsed. Sponsors dropped her brand deals, and even her own relatives stopped answering her calls. Clara's fall was quieter, but deeper. The court's conservatorship locked her accounts for 18 months. No card, no credit, no spending she couldn't prove. without her curated lifestyle brands backed out. Her influencer career dried up like wet paint in the sun. Evan finalized their divorce and started therapy. He told me later I should have left years ago. Thank you for making me see it. I didn't feel victorious. I felt released. Christmas Eve came quietly. Tessa arrived with a casserole she insisted was mediocre but edible. Mark brought a bottle of red wine. A few neighbors came by with cookies and mismatched mugs. We pulled chairs close together and talked like people who survived something and were grateful to still be standing. When we raised our glasses, I lifted mine a little higher. Some families are born, I said. Others are chosen. I choose mine. Tessa touched her glass to mine. And we choose you. Mark smiled. Always. After they left, I stood alone for a moment, looking at my Christmas tree, a small one this time barely reaching my shoulder, draped in simple white lights. No grand ornaments, no performance, no lies. Just light. Just peace. If you're listening to my story, hit like, leave a comment, or subscribe. Your support helps these stories travel farther than you know. I sat beside the tree, breathed in the pine, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Home.